So in case you don't know what you're here to listen to, I'll tell you anyway, just to clue you in. This morning we're going to talk about a topic that has been really growing, particularly over the past 2 years, which is basically fraud, theft, freight fraud, and other types of fraudulent and deceptive practices that are going on in terms of the motor carrier industry, broker industry, and just generally across our sector overall. For introductory purposes, I'll just introduce the panel real quick. I'll make some opening statements, and then we're going to go ahead and jump right into our 3 subject matter experts, which, as you notice, I am not one of the subject matter experts. And they'll be happy to go over just for a few minutes some of the topics we're working on, such as modus. We have one of our investigators here. They'll talk about some of the investigative activities and things that we really want our driver and carrier community to look for. And then, of course, we have like I said, our IT and our industry representative up here today. So my name is Tom Liberatore. I am the director of the Office of Enforcement and Compliance for FMCSA. I've been with FMCSA. It'll be going on 11 years this year. Prior to that, I worked for the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration, dealing primarily with commercial vehicle licensing, medical certification, testing. So about 21 years total in the commercial vehicle arena. To my left, we have Mr. Louis Pugh, and I believe you, Louis, you're the Executive Vice President for OID, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Right, thank you. We have Mr. Ankur Saini, who is our Chief Product and Technology Officer. Recently took on that role, but Ankur's been with FMCSA for 5 years now, 4 years?
Almost 6.
Yeah, almost 6 years. Okay, so neither. Right, thanks. And we have Shannon Shelf, who is with our Special Investigations Unit. And Shannon, you think you have almost 2 decades as well, if not more, in law enforcement and with FMCSA.
20 with the state, here in Kentucky State Police, and then 21 now with FMCSA.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And yes, for those that didn't pick that up, Shannon is locals with KSP for, like you said, over 20 years. This is going to be a panel discussion format, like I said, so we'll talk for a few minutes, probably 30 minutes or so, and then we do have 2 microphones, so we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I will, just in advance, not to deter any type of questions, because we certainly want the communication and the interaction, but if you ask 2 specific things that may relate to like an active investigation or something that we're doing, we're not going to be able to comment about specifics for ongoing investigations for security reasons, but we can talk at a high level about what the agency is doing and other things as well. So just to put that out there, so just to kind of frame your question in the right perspective. So the reason we're having this session today is, like I said, we know this has been a growing concern within the motor carrier sector. Depending upon who you talk to, some estimates range, on the low side, $750 million in 2025, over $1 billion or more, depending upon whose metric that you follow, in terms of losses from freight theft. So as we also know, those are just the reported ones, right? Those are the ones where a carrier is actually going in and actually reporting it to law enforcement, and that it's also being identified properly, which we'll get into that. There's some questions with Shannon later on about the importance of reporting these, understanding some of the concerns about it, but the importance of actually reporting it to law enforcement, who to report this to if and when it happens, and also even some advice to make sure that when you are reporting it, that law enforcement knows the appropriate code to use when they're documenting it on their reports. In addition, we're also been actively involved for a while, but much more so recently, on some of the concerns regarding deceptive practices. So most of you know what these are, right? We're talking about chameleon carriers, we're talking about ID theft, we're talking about registration issues, we're talking about fraudulent ELD devices, entry-level driver training. So these are all things that as an agency, the Administrator Bars, who is here today, I don't know if he's in the room, but he is certainly here today and actively walking around, and the Secretary have been extremely crystal clear about the need for us as a department to actively engage in those areas and also to pursue appropriate enforcement where the circumstances support that. So that is something that right now, from an agency perspective, we are actively involved in. which is also why we wanted to have this session today, to kind of get your feedback and learn some things just to make sure that what we're seeing equates to what you're seeing as well. Right now, we have about half a dozen concurrent specialized operations that are going on, covering everything from principal place of business fraud to chameleon carriers to cabotage to CDL issuance. So we have a lot of activity in terms of what we're doing individually as a department, and also what we're incorporating and involving our partners as well. And that would be entities like KSP, our Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program partners in law enforcement. Also our federal partners, working actively with FBI, ATF, the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, in those areas where those entities that have law enforcement authority and have the ability to take law enforcement action beyond the civil action that we can take are also engaged in these conversations as well. Just some examples of some things we've done recently. Most of you may have seen this or read about them. We've done targeted activities in regards to high-risk carriers, which are ongoing right now. In December, we did a targeted activity for entry-level driver training providers in the training provider registry. We did over 1,500 investigations within a 2-week period. Visits to driver training schools. We've removed over 6,800 driver training providers in the past 6 months from the list based on those investigations and some other outreach that we've done. On the ELD side, I'm sure many of you know, we've been in the practice of removing devices that haven't been compliant. We recently started a new vetting process for ELDs that is really bearing fruit for us. So far, we've prevented about 280 devices from re-entering the market. And the important aspect with that is a lot of those were from providers, in some cases that we previously removed. And just like we see on the carrier registration side where they're trying to come in as a chameleon carrier, they're trying to come back in as a chameleon device. We're able to catch those now, and in many cases stop them. And we've, like I said, done over 280 of those just since September. I could go on for a long time about all the other stuff that we're doing, but that would detract from our experts here who I want to make sure they have a chance to talk about some of the other areas that they're specifically interested in and are really relevant to what we want to talk about today. So with that, Encore, I'll tag you first. Can you kind of go over just real quickly what we're doing in terms of a registration activity? I know MODIS is a huge popular topic. A lot of people have been talking about it. And we're going to have sessions, I believe tomorrow, I think we're going to have another one that goes into it in more detail. But today, can you just kind of go over really what a quick view of MODIS is and how you think it will address some of these challenges that we've heard on the registration side, particularly as it comes to chameleon carriers and those entities involved in that type of activity?
Sure, yeah. So I'll lead the conversation by first talking about what anatomy of fraud generally looks like, and when we are trying to address some of the prevalent issues in the industry regarding fraud, our approach is to address the underlying disease and not just the symptoms that we see, right? From a general perspective, right? There's generally a motivation which is often economic or financial. There is a vulnerability in the system, and by system I'm not just talking about the IT system, but the system in general, like how you register, what are the operating authorities you need, what is required for you to have those operating authorities. So there's generally a vulnerability. There is an ease associated with how easily you can exploit those vulnerabilities. In some cases, it's very easy. In other cases, it's not so easy. And all of those things create a threat vector that becomes fraud at some point, right? So if you just took a point solution to fraud is a complicated or a complex problem, right? So it's not straightforward. And what we've come to know over time is, for every complex problem, there's often a simple, straightforward, and wrong answer, right? So, I mean, we all think we can solve it in a heartbeat. It creates other problems when you deploy simple, straightforward responses. And technology tends to be like that. What we are using technology today to do is reducing our exposure to that threat. The threat vector remains because the motivation and the economic factors that drive that fraud are still there, but we can make it very hard for somebody to exploit vulnerabilities that remain in the system and give feedback to the system that there are vulnerabilities. So we'll take Modus as an example. That's our new US DOT registration system that we're going to launch shortly. Today, anybody interact with the registration systems of FMCSA? One, two. So you have few. And you can probably attest to the fact that you have to deal with not one, but many systems, right? And systems are built by people, and people like each other and not like each other. So do you think these systems were all built by people that liked each other? Probably not, right? That's a probability. So because people didn't talk to each other, the systems don't talk to each other, right? That creates another threat vector saying, okay, you can do X in the system, and then you can do completely Y in another system, and because they don't talk, there's a mismatch. You should not be doing something in one versus the other, right? So those kinds of problems exist today. With Modus, what we are doing is we are bringing your entire life cycle under one umbrella. So it's going to be a one-stop shop for everything that you do to interact with FMCSA and to manage your life cycle as a carrier. That's one. Also, we're securing our front door in terms of knowing who we are dealing with and you knowing who you are dealing with on the other side. Anybody registering for Modus has to have a login.gov account, which is a common identity platform across federal government if you consume any federal government service. That requires you to remember less passwords, which means less sticky notes behind keyboards to get lost and get stolen passwords. So one password for everything. Once you have established that identity, we're going to go through an ID verification to say, hey, Ankur has registered as Ankur, but is he really Ankur? So we're going to establish that connection saying, yes, Ankur is really Ankur. So once we have established you as an individual, even the businesses or the motor carriers that are being registered, we're going to run them through a business verification so we know this is a legitimate business and not an empty shell. That helps us create an ecosystem where we have identities we can trust and we can allow them to operate autonomously with fair confidence that these folks are good. On the flip side, we're also sometimes we focus a lot more on things that are wrong and frauds going on, this, that, or the other. But there are also like 90-95% of the carrier population that are good carriers and they do great things by the law all the time. So we're making the process to interact with FMCSA a lot more streamlined and a lot more easier. The philosophy we like to use is collect once, use many times. So if you've provided us information once and it's not changing, we can just reuse it. There's no benefit or happiness that comes out of filling the same form 17 times, right? I mean, historically, I don't think that's been well received. So we're making it easier for folks to participate in that process. And generally, if you make it easy, people participate a lot more, and that enhances safety. So these are some of the things that we're doing. So I don't want to take too much time because I can talk about this thing for an hour by itself, right?
You have a whole session for yourself.
And we have one tomorrow, so this is a shameless pitch for tomorrow morning. So
you're clearly the star because your face and name was the only one on the schedule for today's session.
Sure,
so
yes.
We could have you talk the whole time anyway. But I won't put you through that. But I just want to ask you one more quick question, real quick, relevant to. I know you and I have talked about this a lot. But I mean, obviously, most of us, if not all of us, are aware of the President's Executive Order 14286 on trucking, where he outlined his priorities that the Secretary has been implementing in terms of the driver qualifications piece regarding English language proficiency, some of the anti-fraud measures that have been engaged regard of licensing, which kind of encompasses everything that we're doing right now under one umbrella. But in addition to that, we know we also have entities that are actively trying to contact our carrier population, especially now, with the shift to Modus to try to get things from them like, oh, send me your PIN, send me your account information. So what would you recommend are like 2 or 3 things that brokers, carriers, individual drivers, any entity that has to register with FMCSA be really aware of when we're, as they're receiving these types of communications?
Yeah, so one, we have to actively recognize our role as not just a regulator, but as an educator. Mm-hmm. right? And that's from a technology standpoint. Like now, we can all acknowledge that we live in a world where, whether you like it or not, you're in the technology business, right? The days of paper forms and faxes and phones are over, right? So everybody wants you to send them an email, fill out an electronic form, do something that is using a computer or an information system. So we all have to be pretty vigilant about who's asking for information, how do we trust who's asking for information. So if you receive a random text message from an entity that is not on your contact list and say, I need your social security number or your company's going out of business, I would not send them my social security number, right? Like that's those kinds of basic hygiene, which we consider basic, it's not basic to everybody. We have to recognize our role as an educator and say, we should put more messages out there to say, these things are not normal. We don't reach out for all of those things, marketing our services, we don't do those things.
Right.
If you don't receive something from a .gov email, that's not from us. So we have to sort of amplify those messages, but also it's a collective responsibility. Everybody needs to take responsibility for their own privacy and their own information. And I mean, I have parents and grandparents just like everybody else.
Yeah.
They do stuff where I shake my head and I'm like, well, why are you guys doing this?
Don't respond to the daily text messages for your free $100,000 loan.
Like I do not have a cousin in Nigeria that died and left me $1 billion. I know that.
I got three of those.
Why try?
I got 3 of those this morning.
Yes, exactly.
So okay, yeah, thank you. We'll come back to probably at the end encore, but I want to give Luby a chance to talk to. Luby, I mean, obviously, you know, your position at Awadi, you've been there for a long time. We're a driver for a long time, and be it an independent driver, owner-operator, or a motor carrier entity, you know, one of our larger carrier groups, everyone's kind of in the same bucket with some of the stuff when it comes to theft and fraud, but particularly the evolution of theft, where it used to be just, you know, some people with some bolt cutters that would come, cut a trailer, take what they wanted. It's really evolved, you know, now obviously in terms of the sophistication and coordination that we're seeing in some of these areas. But from your perspective as a driver and that side, what do you see as kind of the key issues that you all are dealing with right now on the direct front line as to what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen multiple things. I mean, when this all started at this downturn in the economy at the end of COVID, what the first thing we started seeing incoming members were getting hit with was folks were stealing known carrier or brokers' names, just kind of and pretending to be them. And what would happen is they'd get the load and they would go deliver the load, and then they turn the paperwork into this fictitious person who they thought was a known entity. And then, you know, they never get paid, and then we get the paperwork, and as you said, the email would be off just one little thing or a number. That was sort of the first thing. Then it kind of evolved into where we got into where we're getting these, freight theft was a thing starting to happen, where guys would pick up loads or gals pick up a load, take it somewhere, be on their way to deliver, and of course everybody here as a trucker knows this happens. They'd call and say, hey, you need to take this somewhere else now. And they would do it, deliver it, leave, and then these people would steal the load, steal the freight at some cross dock or something somewhere. We see that happen. And we see people who got into the industry and got DOT numbers, or they bought somebody else's DOT numbers, and they would broker the load themselves, put it to a carrier, then double broker it onto them, and stuff like that. So it's all over the gamut. The best thing I can tell people out here, and we can tell y'all to protect yourselves, first and foremost, know who you're working for, know who you're hauling for. If you don't know somebody, if the load sounds too good to be true or anything like that, it probably is. You know, nothing against load boards, nothing against the folks who have load boards, trust up any of those folks, but you're much safer if you're hauling for a broker's own load board that they own and you know. If you take a load off of a load board, and especially as somebody, you know, try to, you know, we all got a phone, we can, you know, smartphone, Google that company, call that company, make sure it's legitimate. Make sure this is a legitimate real load before you do anything, and especially if they start calling you, telling you different things anything seems fishy. The other thing, and I can't stress this enough, every single one of these that's come through our office, and it's been a bunch, the name on the bill of lading does not match the motor carrier picking up the load. It's supposed to. Your bill of lading, if you're a broker out here or you've got your own customers as a carrier, you need to educate your shippers, because it's for their protection too, that they're putting the right name at the top of that bill of lading. And if you go pick up a load and the bill of lading doesn't match who you supposedly took it for, that's a huge red flag. But by all means, if you pick up a load and your name, and I did this myself when I was trucking, scratch that name out and put your name on the copy you get, sign and give them, and the copy you take yourself, because it's so very, very important in this. And that way there's starts to be a paper trail. We can know where these things are. It's a tough thing. FMCSA, I give them a lot of credit. Once they realize this happened, they've been doing a lot of things to try to solve this problem. But just the con artists out there got nothing but time, and are always figuring out the next thing, which makes this really tough, and it's a moving department. And as we all know, and I know FMCSA has been talking about this, Administrator Barrs, Secretary Duffy, we need to elevate the barrier of entry into our industry, and I think everybody here knows that. Especially to be a motor carrier or be a broker, so we know the people that are out there are legit. And of course, it's created more problems because now a lot of brokers and folks like that are using freight verification systems and all these different systems, and we're running into now where if your ELD doesn't match what they use, they don't want to load you, or if you don't have an ELD because you're exempt, or whatever reason that does. So it's creating more and more problems with everybody trying to fix it. But you're right, this is a industry problem, this is a federal problem, and we all got to try to work together to put this to go. CVSA, to their credit, have realized this, and I'm fortunately been on the panels with them, along with Shannon over here. They're coming up with ways to try to help roadside to try to figure out when they pull over if this is a fraudster or a fraud load, or if the trucker's being frauded or whatever. And there should be some stuff coming out here in another month on the CVSA end to help roadside enforcement as well. But unfortunately, a lot of times by the time it gets on the truck, it's too late.
So I'm gonna ask this, and you're free to answer honestly, obviously. Is there anything that is not being done right now that you think should be done? I mean, as I hope most of us do, that the department put out a request for information late last year on this topic, on fraud and theft. And the secretary has tasked a really talented and dedicated core group of senior leaders within the department to really dive into this issue very, very, very deeply. In those lines, is there anything that you think that we should be looking at that you think we're not looking at right now?
No, I think you guys are looking at things good. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said a few minutes ago, and I know that these are in talks and all this, but raising the bar of getting entry is, to me, is what's really going to solve this problem and stop this problem. And I know it's being worked on different ways of how to do it and stuff, and I think that's going to be the really thing. I mean, probably if we can ever get this economy to flip and get freight, back up where it should be, that will probably help some as well. But, because like I said, these people, they picked the right time to do this because we had way more of a capacity of equipment than we did freight. And as truckers know in here, when it's like that for us, it's hard to, a load hits a load board and it's good. You've only got a minute or two to take that load, and it's hard for a 52.5% of all registered motor carriers are one truck trailer folks. They're not sitting at their office or their desk. They don't have time to go through and do all these background checks that they probably should do and need to do. They just don't have the time or the ability. And it makes it really tough. And these folks saw that, and it was ripe pickings for them.
Great. Thank you, Lou. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, Shannon, you're up. I'll go easy on you, trust me, it's okay. So from an investigative stance, I mean, I know Ankur said it and Louis have both hit it, but one of the things I wanted to make sure that we really, talk about today a little bit is what do you see in terms of patterns? I think Louis did a good job of summarizing what they were seeing on the driver's side. We see it from a little different perspective on the investigative side. So what do we usually see? How are we getting this information? The importance of telling us that this is going on, and what are patterns that you're seeing in terms of some of these on both sides, the theft side, and I think it's important to hit on the identity theft as well, which we know also happens.
Well, we get, excuse my voice, I've got up today with the sinus thing going and decided it wanted to take my throat out. But we see all these reports coming in from across the board, maybe law enforcement, maybe industry. Maybe somebody that I know, that I've worked with in years past calls, and fraud and theft. So the mindset is kind of, I got two rules I tell everybody when they start getting into this. Like if FBI calls me wanting help, I'm going to tell them nothing is as it appears to be, and there's an element of identity theft somewhere. It may be the shipper, it may be the broker, it may be a carrier. I'm telling you, there's always a stolen identity in that. I look at freight like a timeline, right? That's how I vision it in my mind, and how it flows and goes from one party to the next to the next. And so when I'm trying to figure it out, I'm vetting each party that I can find, had contact with that load. And I'm looking for that stolen identity, or that corrupted identity. And I know it's there. And many times, unfortunately, it is self-induced. Somebody went to a website, looking for some cheaper insurance. And it was a phishing website, and entered some information, and the next thing you know, somebody was signing up with a broker, and it was a real broker, but it was a .net instead of a .com. I mean, you had the right the right site. It was just, a different dot on the end of it, and it's a phishing site. So the fraud and theft organizations, they rely on the phishing stuff very heavily now. So I would encourage everyone to get themselves some phishing, some email training, malware, and you can get on YouTube and look that stuff up, and it'll save you a lot of trouble down the road. That's for sure. Another thing I deal with is a lot of people, they lose money or they get something stolen, and they're obsessed with tracking down who did it to them. And if you've got 1,000 or 2,000 hours to invest in trying to track down who did it to you, but that's not realistic. And then at the end of that, who are you going to get to prosecute them, right? Because if it's a one-off, nobody's going to prosecute it. You've got to take what happened to you and find 100 more yous to make it one big one, and then possibly, FBI or HSI or even the state police detective might take it and go to a prosecutor and say, here, take this. So it's not just easy to get stuff done. It's all cumulative. You've got to build it and build it. So I came from a drug background, and so this fit me perfectly, because it's all about going down the rabbit hole and connecting the dots. And then you get so far down, you forget how you got there. So you're going back looking through notes from a month ago, trying to realize you just found your aha moment, and you don't know how you got there. You can't articulate it now, But that's the way this fraud and theft business works. So nothing's as it appears on the surface. There's always identity theft. Basic, simple things. If you file a complaint and I see your complaint, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure you're legit. That's how paranoid I am. Okay, I take nothing at face value, right? And it's sad to be that way, but that's kind of the world we live in, right? And then we still get beat. You still get fooled. You can't help it.
So you hit on something there I wanted just to tag real quick, and I know your voice comes in and out, so I'll try to keep you from talking too much. But, when you said reporting, so there's kind of two things we've really been trying to get out to the industry, which is one, reporting to your law enforcement when these issues actually happen, the importance of that, and that goes to your, if it's a one-off, you may not be as likely for success, but the more information that we get in terms of everyone reporting these when it happens, we can collect that information, and it helps us identify who these actors are, right? And then also letting us know, either it be through our DOT OIG tip line or through the NCCDB to us directly to help us kind of coordinate this information. And if you can just for a minute, just talk about the importance of doing that.
One of two things is going to happen to you. You're going to have a physical identity theft encounter where somebody is masquerading as you and getting inspections and causing havoc and getting your insurance canceled, okay? Or you're going to have a virtual where somebody is posing as you and trying to book or rebroker loads, okay? So it's going to be physical, it's going to be virtual. Get your local law enforcement, and they're not going to work the case, but get them to take a report, okay? Because everything, in our criminal justice system, everything has to be documented. And we're not law enforcement, but if we are going to push stuff, help them, there's a way they expect, the foundation to come to them. And so get your police report, then go to our National Consumer Complaint Database and file a complaint. Now, you may not like the way the police responded to you, but they gave you a report. And you may not like the way the NCCDB responded to you, but you got a report documented. Upload that police report on that complaint. Because 2 years from now, and we've had this happen, 2 years from now, you're going through complaints. You get onto somebody, down the rabbit hole, you find somebody, and you start going through complaints, and you find a gold mine of evidence of complaints from 2 and 3 years ago.
Yeah, there could have been under different care
Yeah,
names,
and then
different
bingo,
DOTs.
you just connected all the dots.
Yeah.
It's a good day. Yeah, so file the police reports, file the NCCDB complaints.
Yeah, and I appreciate the point where you said that sometimes, on one instance, we may not have enough information necessarily to really dive in deep, but we do retain all of this information. And particularly now where we're seeing the connection with fraud and theft and chameleon carriers, and we're doing an investigation right now on a group that's involved in that. You're able to make those connections to 7, 8, 9, 10 different entities over a span of 2 or 3 years that individually you may not have been able to identify.
And one more thing. I started to say this a while ago. You have to spend all this time trying to figure out who ripped you off, and there's nothing at the end for you. Focus on what's real. Okay? When you get ripped off, the one thing that's real is the money. The money is always real. Focus on the money. How do I get paid? Don't worry about identifying who did it to you. Focus on your money. Okay? And that'll really clear the way you think. And you will get your mind right when you start thinking about just the money.
Great,
Hey,
thanks.
Tom?
Yes, go ahead, Luke. Okay.
Last week or week before, Shannon and I were at CVSA, and Shannon was presenting, we were talking about this stuff. You guys brought up, you and BK, I don't know which, but brought up about now they've gotten factoring companies brought into this stuff as well. And how, would you talk about, that's, a lot of people use factoring and stuff, and it's a real thing out there. You touch on that for a minute?
Well, all right, without saying too much, okay. Factoring companies kind of operate like banks. I'm not saying anything bad about them, okay? But they kind of operate like banks, only they're totally unregulated. And the only oversight is they have their professional associations. So and this is my extent of the knowledge, what I've been able to figure out. So I'm leery of new factoring companies, newly formed. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying I'm going to vet the heck out of them.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's not that you're judging somebody media just because they're new. Because we had a case a few months ago where we had a new person starting a brokerage, completely legit. They got ripped off. By,
I got a report
by
yesterday.
somebody. Right, yeah. They were completely legit. But it goes to Luby's point and Encore's point too, which is whoever you're dealing with, you have to do your due diligence. And there was a note I had made to myself, I forgot to say earlier. It's really about two things, right? It's about vigilance on your part, right? Being vigilant, making sure you're being thorough, using the resources, be it FMCSA's website, or another public databases that you can look at to make sure this is legitimate. So if be it a broker, be it an insurance carrier, be it a factoring company, whomever you're using is legitimate, and to the best of your ability, you can validate who they are.
And Google, I mean, I can't tell you how good of a tool Google is. Just search everything. And don't accept the first hits that come back, right? Because analytics can buy the return, right?
It must be true on the internet.
It must be. So, like, I usually go to page 2. I usually don't even look at page 1. I just go straight to page 2 and start, because I know what's coming up on page 1.
Okay, I think that's kind of the last prepared question I have. I'm looking to see how much time we've got. I got anyone, Luby, Encore, Shannon, anything you want to say, before we wrap this part up and open the floor up to some questions?
The only thing I was going to say, and I'll add, anybody, if you get a load and you think it's maybe there's something fishy there, you're not sure, you're always welcome to call OIDA, ask for our compliance department. Our compliance agents are on top of this, and they can kind of help you maybe do some extra background checks or something like that. So don't ever hesitate. If you get something, you're a little concerned, call those guys. They see all this, they know how all this stuff works, and before you deliver the load or get yourself in a mess and not getting paid.
Well, the only other thing I would say is, I think, Lou, you touched on it where you said, 52% of the folks are owner-operators and they don't have time to do this extensive vetting, and you talked about spending a lot of time on investigations. Mm-hmm. A lot of work that we do on the IT side is to aggregate information from various sources and make it available to everybody who's making those decisions so that they can make that decision faster in a more educated way. Mm-hmm. That work is not sexy. It's not talked about often. Right? But that's work that drives most of the things. That's what makes systems better, right? If we can collect information in a more efficient way, aggregate it real time or near real time, and then serve it out to the public, to the motor carriers, to the investigators, to the owner operators, so that they can have a more educated way of making a decision right there and then without spending hours or minutes even, that's a win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that point, I wanted to plug real quick. On the FMCSA website, we have our phishing page. Not that we're phishing you, but to alert people about, I won't do that, about scams and things that we've been made aware of. And, we've worked on quite a few where these entities have become very adept. They use AI to create web pages that will look almost identical to, anyone's web page, ours, anyone else's. But you got to be careful and make sure you're looking at, one is really check the web address, right? Yep. Make sure it's not off by one number, off by one letter, something as simple as that, can indicate that it's something to look out for. But we have a page that kind of helps everyone and kind of points out what to look for in these current scams that we're aware of that are going on. And that's right on our FMCSA webpage.
Yep.
Yeah, I know you guys help maintain that with Kent Shop. And anything you want to say in closing, sir?
No such thing as a coincidence. No, I'm serious. When you're doing your searches and something pops up that's true. It's contradictory to what you've already seen, and you say, that's weird. Just stop right there.
Yep. Okay,
that's it. You're done. I'm telling you, there's no such thing. Yeah.
All right, great, Shannon. Thank you. So just in closing real quick, I just wanted to say, we threw out a lot of different information today. Like I said, a lot of this is on our website. A lot of this is stuff probably people had heard in various components. This is something we're going to continue to be involved in. As I said earlier, the administrator, the secretary, the president, have clearly tasked our agency with helping to address this issue. It really involves two things I wanted to hit on, which is vigilance, which I said a few minutes ago, right? Where we all have a responsibility to be vigilant, us as the regulators and the entities responsible, for some of these areas, helping maintain what we're doing and to address these issues as quickly as we can. But also partnerships, I think, is the other aspect, which is why we have a diverse panel up here today of individuals from various positions within the sector, which I think is great because it gives us the opportunity to talk about what we're seeing in an honest way. It's kind of like, check your hat at the door. This isn't personal at this point. We're all working together to solve a problem. And I wanted to plug real quick to the work of our state law enforcement partners. We have an operation going on in Florida, actually, right now. This week it started, where we're working with multiple agencies in Florida. We work with our partners in every state to help enforce these areas. So without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And also our other federal partners as well that help us in this. And of course, industry, be it the independent owner operators, our larger fleets. We're all sort of in this together. It's a problem that affects everyone in the whole sector. So with that, I think I'll thank our panel today for coming up and giving their time. Really appreciate it. And we have two microphones. We have Tim and Bill who are on either side. So if you're interested in asking a question, we'll do our best to answer. If you like the answer, you can give us credit. If you don't like the answer, you can blame Bill. And he'll be happy to take it. So please go ahead and raise your hands. And I can't see Bill, Tim. You guys can go ahead, and the lights are right there. Pick whomever you saw come.
We'll start with this gentleman.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for being here today to share your expertise and knowledge on what's going on. But I've got hundreds of questions I could ask because I've been hit myself personally as our carrier. We've been hit at least 24 times in the last 6 to 8 months. It's pretty crazy, and it does involve a lot of time going back to research. But I guess a couple questions is this session today recorded where we can go back and listen to it and catch up on some of the information that you shared. 2, what is your perspective? Is I get a lot of calls, and after this, non-domiciled and illegal driving has become a hot subject. I am now getting hundreds of calls from third-party logistics or a dispatch service. I have a response for them when I do get them, but I would like to hear your perspective for those here that may get those and don't know what to do or how to go back and double check. If you could answer that.
Sure. Yeah. I'll start and then I'll kick it over to Shannon, who I'm sure will be happy to give you his opinion about dispatch services, and maybe Louis too. So it's sort of what we said earlier. You really need to check who is reaching out to you to offer you that type of service. So there are instances, it's not uncommon, we do get complaints about dispatch services. They are not regulated directly by us. However, we are seeing an increase in the use of foreign dispatch services. So we have had instances where we just had one, Shannon, I think it was 2 months ago, where we tracked them to Dublin. I mean, it's the age of the internet, as Ankar was saying. So they can be anywhere, right? And you can set up your dispatch service and appear like you're based, either in the U.S. or even if not in the U.S., Canada, Mexico. You're legitimately involved in freight movement, and they may or may not be. So the degree that you can verify and validate who they are, is critical. If it does happen where you went with them and you were fleeced in some capacity, what's really important, and Shannon, I don't want to steal your thunder, you can talk about this more, but any emails that you had from them, any kind of contact that you had, if you want to file the complaint in the NCCDB, it's important to upload the email header information, and if you report it to us, and when we're looking at it, more than likely Shannon or one of his colleagues in our special investigations unit may give you a call and kind of walk you through how to pull that header information, because that has the IP address. And then once we have that, we can work either ourselves or with other partners to kind of identify where this entity's coming from. Shannon, did you want to add anything to that?
Almost every dispatch service I've ever dug into, has led back to outside of the U.S. You know, even though that you may be talking to a person in Atlanta, all right, they're contracting with a service that's based in, you name it, right?
Correct. And so, and thanks for sharing that. And based on my experience and my background on how much I've had to deal with it, the very first question I asked is, got a broker MC number? And, well, we don't need one because, as you said, they're not regulated as we are as a carrier or a broker if we have a broker MC number. And they're like, well, we don't need one. Well, I flat out tell them, my insurance company's not going to pay if you don't have a broker MC number.
Yeah.
Because whether or not my insurance will support that or not, it's, if, like you said, a load is stolen or anything like that, who am I going to go after to get paid? You know, I have no MC number, I have no brokerage or anything like that. So that's how I handle it. Whether it's the right or wrong way, I think it's the best in my situation. But as you talked about vetting, as an owner-operator, I've got 3 other independents leased to me. And, you know, my driver's like, why do we got to have pictures? Why do we got to have this? Why do we got to have that? It's become extremely time-consuming. I will say for every load that we move, I spend 2 to 5 hours a week just on the one load.
I believe that.
Just between the paperwork, the background, and so forth. So the other thing I would say is thanks to you from OIDA. You have resources as being a member we can call for legal advice to do some checking for us. There's other organizations that do the same thing. So based on my experience, I would encourage any of you that are out here, become a member. You know, do some background on the organizations and talk to somebody that's been a member, a long-time member. See what they're saying about it. So again, thanks for sharing the information today because it is a huge problem. It's bigger than people realize.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, just, you know, again, it can be a completely legitimate dispatch service, right? But you just want to make sure that to the degree that you can validate, you know, you need to really take an extra look, particularly if they're ones that are soliciting you. You definitely want to make sure, you know, you just like those text, I know I was saying it tongue in cheek, but just like those text messages that you receive unsolicited, you want to make sure that, I really gotta do my due diligence here. Okay, all right, sorry. I think Ingrid had her, did you have your hand up? Or, okay.
Tom,
I think it's on.
mic on? Is it on now?
If it's not on, if you want to ask her a question, I can repeat it out loud. Oh, there you go.
There it goes. Okay, now it's on. Oh, yeah, it's really on. Tom, one of the things, and for anybody up there, and this is be a multi-agency thing, right, is that, is there any possibility of getting cargo theft designated in its own UCR code, Uniform Crime Reporting Code? So for my time in law enforcement and all that, it all gets lumped together in vehicle theft. I mean, you can go to NIBRS, but it needs its own UCR code because there's, for 2 reasons. Number one, I think it's woefully underreported because of that one particular thing.
Yeah.
And then number 2, we have certain district attorneys throughout the U.S. in specific areas that I won't call out, that say,
Thank you. Yeah.
well, that says, Houston, Texas, that says that is a civil matter. No, you have a contract to haul freight, therefore it's not theft, it's a civil matter. And that filters down to, like, my former years of law enforcement. Well, if the DA is not going to prosecute it, we don't want to take the report. So what are the chances? I mean, we talked about this back pre-9/11 with the FBI task force on getting its own UCR code, and then obviously priorities changed. But if you could elaborate on that just for a
Sure,
second.
yeah, no, I can. So that's, and I'm glad you brought that up. So you're right. What happens, that what we see is a lot of time it gets listed as theft from a motor vehicle, you know, some other type of standard commercial theft. So what we've been saying is to ask the law enforcement officer taking the report to specifically use a freight theft code. And I believe there is one now. I think it's 2A. I think there is a specific cargo theft or freight theft code that can be used, and I can double check, but I think it's important. And this falls on us somewhat too, and we're actually working on reinvigorating our commercial interdiction course to include this information for our law enforcement partners. Say, hey, if you have someone report to you a cargo theft issue, this is how it should be documented. This is what it should say in the report. Here's the code you should use. And also just to educate them on the importance and time for us it is to have that information. But I'll double check. I think there is a code, I think, that.
Well, there is a code, but it's 26 and it's in the NIDRS. It
Okay.
doesn't roll up to.
Yes, it is a subcode kind of thing, yeah. Yeah, no, we can certainly, I mean, we'll have to obviously talk to, the federal agencies that are responsible for setting up those, but there's, some legislation in Congress, we can't comment on it one way or the other, but just for awareness there is to cover this. And the group of senior leadership within the department that I was talking about is actively looking at these kind of issues, so.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think, Tim, there you go.
Hello, everyone.
Whoops.
So I was hit with probably over $400,000 in losses with the fraud going on around the United States, and one of them was copper load. And my simple question is, what are we doing in FMCSA with the shippers? Because there's a lot of things going on still at the shipper position, which is totally not verified. And I look at the logistics business as the same as this is a federal business, and also looking at the aviation business. And I'm very concerned about the shipper situation, because I believe that the national security, as we call it, trucking business, is really uncontrolled at the shipper position. There's no verification. There's no checking most of the time. And the only probably company that I saw from the brokerage side that actually took action, that what my experience is, was RJW, who simply put the person in front of the first dock at their facility and actually verified every sticker, every person, every face, everything. Mm-hmm. And I think they cleaned up really well with that issue. But my simple question is, what are we doing with the shippers? Because from ELD, loading times, private business like shipping business is affecting the actual carriers who has 50, 60, 70 million dollars of loans on their names and their family names. Mm-hmm. So my question is very simple. How can we help the shippers probably to verify who's there at the dock? Because I look as the airplane gate. Can we load our loads on these truckers, that are actually there just for their own financial benefit? Mm-hmm.
So that's a great question. And I'll let, I don't know if Louis probably may have some opinions on this too, so I'll ask him as well. But I mean, it's, if we're talking about making shippers aware of the issue, and its impact and what they should be doing, I mean, that's a multi-agency aspect, to be honest with you, that's going to have to be done. We have talked a lot about that in the past, I would say probably 4 months, in terms of what are the outreach kind of communications we need to have with the shipper community. I mean, that's a broad group, right? I mean, it's millions of people, and entities would fall into that business. But what is a centralized point where we can have some of this common information on, this is your and I use air quotes, responsibility as a shipper to make sure that who is there is who they say they are, and that the load is being operated legitimately. There's been some proposals legislatively that, there are a bunch that are kind of floating around. So I would say from the discussion point, the use or involvement of shippers, I think, is certainly at the top of that list. I don't know, Louis, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody in here is probably, there's brokers, you got your customers, the trucker folks in here, you got your own customers. I mean, of course, as we all know, these guys don't really have any oversight over shippers.
We don't, right. Yeah.
So it's kind of up to us to kind of try to educate best we can. It gets really hard because we have brokers controlling freight, we have 3PLs, a lot of customers don't have their own shipping departments anymore, and the guy on the dock doesn't care. We know that. I mean, the last 10 years I hauled water treatment chemicals that were hazardous, and the place I loaded them, you went in there, I mean, of course, I was in there all the time, they knew me, but I watched everybody else, other people. Hey, you just come in, you go over here, all these bills are laying on a shelf, you pick up your bills, you sign them, you put them in a slot, you don't walk over to some guy on the dock and load my truck, and away you go. They don't check anything. And I mean, that stuff, it can kill people. Mm-hmm. So, and it's, You know, we all know that's the bad thing about trucking. We've been on this race to the bottom forever because shippers don't care how good you are, especially big ones. They don't care how good you are or how good your equipment is. They just care how cheap you are. And that's a bad situation to be in, and that's part of the reason where we are. But you're right, shippers need to take responsibility. It blows my mind. They'll load $100,000 worth of product on a truck and not have a clue who's hauling it, what their truck equipment looks like, if they have the credentials to even haul it. Because we've seen that too. So, you know, again, it goes back to try to educate the best you can and hope you get the right person that listens. You know, when you're doing your contracts, bring these things up, you know, we're the eyes and ears, again, and try to educate them that way. And it'd be great if FMCSA could put out something that we could pass on to our shipper community.
But, Tom, you probably involved with this. This also has somewhat hooks into the chameleon carrier, reincarnated carrier problem that we have. Because, yes, shippers should take the responsibility of vetting who's carrying their load, whether they have the proper authority or not. But if somebody with a DOT number and proper authority shows up to your doorstep, it should not be a question whether they're a legitimate carrier or not.
Right.
Today it is.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
So that makes the problem complicated. So I think as we address those trust and identity issues a little bit, some with technology and some with policy.
Will help, yeah. It'll help, yeah, with that.
So it'll help saying, yeah, if somebody shows up to a doorstep and they have the proper credentials, they're legitimate.
And you know, a lot of the problem we have too in the shipping community is the front office doesn't know what the dock's doing, and the dock doesn't know what the front office is doing, and nobody ever communicates. And all the front office cares about is the widgets are going in and the widgets are going out and everything's getting where it needs to be. So, you know, and they're not down there talking to dock guys and saying, hey, you need to do this and do that. So again, it's this big education process.
So I want to add one thing.
Okay.
Over the past year, I've noticed shippers tightening stuff up, trying to implement more security. Some of them, you know, tightening stuff up a little bit. And of course, you know, crooks are like water. They're always going to go the path of least resistance. So how they have responded is with fraudulent decals on the trucks, screen printed plates on the truck, high quality fraudulent CDLs for the drivers who show up. So it's like their efforts opened a whole new door of what we're going to do to beat their efforts.
Yeah. It is a constantly, it goes to the vigilance part, right? They will constantly evolve. We need to be constantly involved.
I don't think it's ever going to be able to be completely stopped. I really don't.
No, well, the point. Well, I mean, if that's the case, you could argue, you know, why do we arrest people, right? It's because you need to stay vigilant with it because enforcement is a tool to do it. The problem doesn't go away, but if you don't take the right action, it just makes things a lot worse.
Right. I mean, it's the economics of punishment too, right? Like my dad used to say, it's like there's no punishment for committing a crime. The punishment is for getting caught, right?
Right. You're right. Yeah, that's the punishment for getting caught. Yes.
So if the economics of punishment don't add up,
Okay. Yeah.
people are going to continue to commit it.
All right. Last question, and because I think we're almost out of time.
Hey,
Yeah.
thanks for y'all being here. Ingrid Brown. You know, we can talk about, you know, monitoring emails. We can talk about shippers. We can talk about that. The thing is freight goes on a truck. Mm-hmm. Freight is a carrier's thing. You know, we look at that freight on a truck and we think about theft of that freight. So what is our biggest thing of what's been opened up is tracking. Mm-hmm. We think about tracking and how easy tracking is for someone to get into, to monitor a truck, to find out what they're carrying, to find out their destination, to find out their times, to find out everything. Freight on a truck is so easy for people to find out through tracking services. You look at all the vetting systems. If you don't have an ELD hooked up, you can't haul my freight. Mm-hmm. If you don't have, download a tracking app, you can't haul my freight. Mm-hmm. What is the number one way to find how to steal a load? Is through tracking. Mm-hmm. And I think we're losing the fact that tracking is one of our biggest things that we really need to look at, because that's the way that they know exactly what they want. And they're good at this, they're excellent at this. So I'd really like to find a way that we are able to protect the carrier, protect the shipper's freight, protect the broker's freight, all the way across the board, of realizing that these guys are so easy to monitor, to follow, and to steal these loads. And we're not really addressing that.
If I can add to that, what the shippers need to do is track the freight itself. They need to put the tracking device on the, not on your phone. That's the big thing, you know, we want to track the phone. All you're tracking on the phone is what the driver's doing. You're not tracking the widgets.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this, I'm going to add this to it, and I don't think anybody that is a carrier, broker, or anything else, who cares what the driver's doing? It's the freight that's in the back of the trailer that anybody cares about, the insurance companies, the brokers, the shippers, the manufacturers, the carriers. Yeah. It's the freight in the back of the truck. You put a track on the back of that truck. Somebody wants to steal the load and it involves the driver, they're going to drop that load somewhere. You don't want to track that driver that's running down the road after he's dropped a trailer full of theft. You want to know where that product is, get to law enforcement, and find that load and find that shipper's freight. At the same time, you're protecting the drivers.
Yeah.
You're protecting the carriers. So if we find a way that we quit finding out if I'm stopping to go to the bathroom versus if I'm going to deliver the load, then, you know me, I kind of stick it out there like that. But seriously, we need to quit tracking the driver on their phone. We need to start tracking the freight, which is where everybody's going to cover when it comes to insurance and who's going to be at fault.
So, and I'll just say, Ingrid, well, first of all, I mean, we do care a little what the driver's doing, but not from that perspective, right? Or from that perspective. But some of the most successful recoveries, and this is with us talking with, our Office of the Inspector General, the Department of Justice, DHS. There's several states that have kicked up freight theft task forces. Some of the most successful recoveries have been where that has happened, where they have placed individual trackers. I'm not going to mention specific company names. There's certain products that you can put in that have tag in the name, or other type of commercially available individual tracking sensors. Some of the most successful recoveries have been where they had that and they were able to pinpoint, I know where freight's supposed to be here. It's in this, unsecured warehouse at this location, and they're able to go in and recollect it from that perspective. So I can say 100% that it is an active part of this discussion as to what is important from the shipper's perspective to ensure that that individual load is being tracked as well to help, in case any of the recovery needs to happen. So I think we're actually over by a couple minutes. I just want to, thank everyone for participating today. If we can get a round of applause for the panel for their time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be here for a couple minutes if anyone wants to ask any questions. And thank you all. Have a great meeting.